Links to everything will be in the description below. The first thing we need to go over is the logic behind a state machine and what a state machine is. A state machine is a method of controlling AI or setting up AI for characters in your game. Today we're talking about a finite state machine. All that means is you can only be in one state at a time. So here's a simple diagram of how our state machine is going to work. At the beginning, we're just going to manually set our state to be the patrol state. And then if this condition is met, we'll switch to our attack state. And if this condition is met, we'll go back to our patrol state. So to go from patrol state to attack state, it requires the enemy to be at its destination. So while it's patrolling, it's going to choose a random point within a collider. It's going to move towards that point. Once it is there, we're going to switch to attacking. For attacking, the way that is going to work is we're just going to debug attacking. But it's set up so that that's where you could have whatever attack code you want. And then if we press the 1 key, we're going to go back to patrolling. That could be like if the thing it's attacking is dead or whatever you really want it to be. Inside the enemy class, there's going to be multiple scripts we have to make for this. We're going to have its own state machine. It's going to have any functions pertaining to any of its states. So any of its attack states or any of its patrol states. In an actual game's implementation, the way I would do it is inside my enemy class, I would have functions that it calls out to other scripts. So it might have an enemy attack component attached to it, and it might reference that component, and then that will handle the attack rather than put everything in one class. But this will work for now. The first thing we need to do is we need to get our enemy. I'm just going to use this mushroom man right here. Then I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this classes. This is where I'm going to create my state class. So this is a base class that every state inherits from. In this method, each state is going to be its own class. It'll help keep things much more organized and much less likely for errors to occur. We're going to need a reference to the type of thing that the state is going to have. In our case, it's going to be an enemy. Then we're going to have 3 functions here. These represent what happens in our state. So the tick is basically an update loop. The onState enter is what will happen when we enter the state. OnState exit, same thing but for when we leave the state. We then need to set up a constructor. All a constructor is a function that is automatically called when the class is referenced or created. And the way it works is the function has to have the same name as the class itself. So all it's doing is automatically assigning whatever enemy we give it to our protected enemy variable. Next, we need to create our enemy script. So right click, C# script, enemy. Our enemy is going to have a couple of variables. These down here, my level collider and the random point, these are going to be used for getting a random point in a collider. I'm not going to go over that in this video as it's outside the scope of this video, but the code will be in the paste bin if someone wants to grab that code and use it in whatever project you're using. So we've got a speed variable because we're going to want to control movement, and then we've got our current state. So this is our state machine. Our current state is going to be whichever state we're currently in, and this variable is going to change depending on that. In our start function, we are going to set our state to our patrol state. Now we haven't created our patrol state yet, but this is what we will be using. In our update, we want to do whatever the tick is of our current state. So this is how that will be called every update. Next, we need to create our set state function. That's right here. So our set state is public because we might want other functions to call it or other scripts to call it. It takes in a state. The first thing it asks is if our current state is not equal to null. So if we have a state, we want to exit that state. Then we'll set our current state equal to state. And if our current state is not equal to null, this is just a safety check. We are going to do our onState enter. So it exits the first state, sets our current state, then enters our next state. Next, we will have whatever we need for our states. So I'm going to take this and put this in. This is going to be our attack function. This is the part where I was saying I would call this, have another script that's like enemy attack, and then we would have a reference in our enemy script to this script. And here, instead of some debug.log attacking, it would be like that enemy script dot do attack or what have you. Well, that way all the attack code is in that script. And I would do the same thing for the patrol code. I'm gonna just copy these two functions. Again, we're not gonna really go into these. They're straightforward. The first one moves us towards a random point. The second one gets a random point, and then the third one just gets our destination. We'll use this to determine if we're near our point. All right, the next step is we need to create our actual states. So what I like to do is I'll make a folder for this called states, and then we have two states we are making. We'll make the patrol state first. So the first thing we need to do is make sure we inherit from states. We're gonna get an error because it says there's no argument that corresponds to the given parameter enemy of state enemy, and that's because we are missing our constructor. So our constructor is gonna look like this. So it matches the same name as our class. It takes in an enemy and this base enemy. What this means is that this constructor right here is going to get called. So when we set our state, so if I go over to my enemy class, here we're saying new patrol. So it's making a new instance of this class, and it is sending in this. Because this is an enemy script, we're telling it, hey, this is the enemy that belongs to this. So enemy is equal to whatever enemy has our state machine on it, and then we do our base constructor, giving it our enemy variable. So our state here knows that this dot enemy is equal to enemy. I hope that made sense. Next, we need to create our tick function. Delete my start and update. We're going to put it right here. So our tick function is going to move towards our point, and then if we are close enough to our point, we will attack. Generally, the way ticks are formatted is always going to be like this. We're going to have do a thing and then a check. If it is true, we're going to transition to our next state. Then you have on state enter and on state exit. You don't need these, but I just put in debugs. Sometimes you might want like an animation to play or a particle effect or what have you. Next, we need to make our attack state. So let's do that. Another C# script, I'm gonna call this attack. Just like the patrol state, what we are going to do is we need to make sure it inherits from states. We also need to set up our constructor, which is gonna be set up the exact same way. Then we need our tick function. Here, we're just gonna call enemy attack. And then if we press the 0 key on the keyboard, we are going to go back to patrolling. If you notice, every state keeps track of the enemy so that they can all communicate with each other. And then I've got our two things, attack state and exit attack state. Now all that is left is plug it up in Unity. So I'm gonna take my mushroom man, I'm going to attach my enemy script to him. And that should be all I have to attach to him. I'm gonna set his speed to something, and then I'm going to give it its level collider. I've already set this up. If you are using the level collider code, do note that you are going to want it to be a trigger. That way you won't have physics collisions. I'm gonna hit play. So there are two things that I needed to correct. The first was that my state class does not want to inherit from mono behavior. So I deleted that. And the other thing was in our patrol, I needed to flip my greater than or less than sign. I also changed the value to 0.2f as opposed to 0.1f. And that is merely because of the way my moving code works, is it was sometimes getting another random point before stopping, because it was kind of up to randomness which if statement was called first. So now if I hit play, we should see we will move to a random point, then stop. And you can see down here in the console that we are attacking. Then if I press 0 on the keyboard, we will move to another patrol point, and then we will switch back to attacking. Then I press 0, move to another point, and then we'll switch back to attacking. So as you can see, this is correctly making us switch between points. If we ever just move a short distance, that's because the two random points that it's chosen are right next to each other. I hope you found this video interesting. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Comment if you have any questions. State machines are kind of complicated, and I will see you in the next one.